You'll help us decide that will survive all of us. And the next 250 years, our descendants will be happy that we did this work. So I want to thank you all for coming. I know it's a Saturday morning and it's during the holiday season, and some of you have already been to meetings already this morning, and some of you have meetings after this. And I know you're probably tired, because I know I am. So anyway, but I want you to really be engaged today, because what you're going to see and what you're going to hear is going to determine what's going to be on the site on Nassau Street. Do not be shy. Well, everybody except Colette. No, that was meant for everybody except Colette. I know she's not going to be shy. But anyway, we're going to get an archaeology update from Jack. We're also going to get a church restoration update and a review of the concept and the markings. So hopefully you'll be able to see images. Please, if there are things that you have questions about, Matt is here to answer those about the site. In order to finish in 2026, we've got to get started. So we've been at this for a minute, so we are hoping that we will hear from you. So everybody that's a descendant in here, just raise your hand if you would. Raise your hand. Descendant. Yeah, okay. Because that's important, that we actually have your input in this. We can have the brightest minds on the planet, but again, we're looking for the voices of the descendants to guide this project. And we are going to have lunch. Corey's going to be here sometime. I don't know if he's bringing chicken, but I know he's coming. Okay, so after this, we're going to feed you, and we want you to fellowship, but please don't be shy about this, okay? And if you have any questions, please let me know. I think, Joe, you're also going to give an update on the remains?
Yes.
Okay, Joe, Dr. Jones is also going to give an update. So with that, I'm going to pass the mic over to Jack.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah. Fantastic. Well, it's wonderful to be here. Wonderful to be with all of you, and I look forward to the discussion that will follow today. And as we've gone through these meetings, we kind of keep the same tempo, and I'll give you an update on where we're at with the archaeological research. Before I do that, though, I want to recognize my team that's here with us today, which includes, in the back there, we've got Katie Wagner, Eileen Kelly, Deshandra Dandridge, and Lauren McDonald. The team that has been doing, the bulk of the research, the excavation, and feel free to grab them and ask any questions you might have. And then Meredith Poole, our senior staff archaeologist, is here in the room, and Crystal Castleberry, our public archaeologist, who has helped set this up. And also, I hope that you all got the handouts that have the different concepts in it, whether you got it maybe at your church or whether you picked one up outside, but she put those together, and they're a fantastic overview of what we're thinking about with this project. So please feel free to flip through those as we go through this morning's presentation. So without further ado, let me just give you some quick updates on where we're at with the site and the research. We won't spend too much time on this because we do want to get into looking at the concepts of how to physically mark the burials, the 62 burials on the site. But just as a quick refresher, here's an overview picture of the site right at the end of our excavation. We see the cemetery open in the back here. We just completed the excavation at the time, and in mid-year of 2023, we went ahead and we filled everything back in order to protect the burials and protect all of the archaeological resources. So the site is not at its final grade yet. By that I mean there's more fill that needs to come in, needs to be shaped for its final appearance, but everything is now protected, which is really important for us. And one thing I want to point out is the parking lot, which is right here. These two parking spaces actually took a bite out of, if you will, the original property boundary of what the church owned. We went to the city and we asked to remove those two parking spaces so that we could restore fully the entire property boundary of what the church owned. So the city agreed, and just a couple weeks ago, we took out those two parking spaces, which I've outlined in red, filled it in, and the black is the outline, the official property boundary of First Baptist Church's property up to 1956. So it was nice that the property is now fully restored. It doesn't have a pipe taken out of it. And in a city that is so concerned with parking, I was really happy that there was no pushback about that either. So now we can fully delineate this property with fences, and it will be historically accurate. And this is one more quick overview shot of the entire property. The footprint of the first church is here. The thin rectangle is the property boundary of what the church owned in around 1805 when it first got to this piece of property. And then over time, as the church expanded, it continued to buy property until it bought this entire block in here, which is what we've now restored with the removal of the 2 parking spaces down there. So that gives you an overview of the property. The burials are all in this area. Actually, no, they're all in this area right here, all 62 of them, with one exception. There's one hanging out over on the side. We also see the grade school in its covering over here as it's being reconstructed and restored by Matt Webster and his team. We're going to hear from Matt here in a little bit about the restoration efforts of the church building on the property. Always have to point out all the work that's going on in the archaeology laboratory, and the team has been continuing to work on cataloging and identifying all of the artifacts that were recovered during the excavation. At our last meeting, we reported that we had, I think, 130,000 artifacts cataloged, and that was just back in September, so these guys have been working hard. We're now at 151,000 artifacts cataloged, and we're starting to analyze and do research into all of those materials. And I just want to very quickly touch on some of the work done by Aileen Kelly, who's one of our lab techs. She's been doing some research into personal adornment items, so clothing items that have been found at the site to help us understand the lived experience of the early congregants as they were on this property. And so what we're seeing here, I'm not going into all the details. I'm going to invite you all to come to our lab and really get into this with us later on. But one of the artifacts that we found that we've also found to be very compelling are straight pins. So these are small copper alloy pins that were used to hold clothing together, primarily women's clothing. I'm looking at Ms. Janice. Do you have how many do you have on you right now? Yeah. And we found over 160 straight pins. And what you're looking at here, this is the footprint of the first church from the early 19th century. So it's called a heat map. And where you see the darker orange and reddish colors is where you have more of something. And so in this case, we're seeing these concentrations of straight pins and personal adornment items right around the front door of the church, which is a really neat pattern for us to see because we think that this is from, as people are entering the church, adjusting their clothing, these things fall off. Then periodically, as they're worshiping inside the church, things fall off. And it gets swept out and accumulates around the front step and the front door of the church. So it's really neat to see these patterns and to start to think about them. This is what people are doing when they come to church. And what do we do today when we get ready to go into church? Get yourself ready, adjust your clothing, and look the best we can. These are fragments of buckles here, probably knee buckles or breeches buckles. So all these artifacts are in our laboratory right now, and in a minute I'm going to put up a list of dates that we're going to invite anyone to come into the lab and hang out with us and take a look at all these materials. So this is just a little teaser of the types of things that we're working on right now, trying to go from the individual little artifacts to really understanding what it was like for the early congregants to be worshiping on this piece of property. Now I'm going to show an image that has human remains in it, so just put this up there so it won't surprise anybody. And actually when you see the image you may wonder what you're looking at, but I'll describe that to you here in a minute. So human remains coming up. We have been going back to the 3 burials that we excavated down to the actual remains themselves. We see a map of it here as grave 1, 13, and 26. As a reminder, grave 26 is the grave where we were able to get DNA that confirmed that that individual was of sub-Saharan African ancestry. All 3 of the burials date to the early 19th century, at the same time period when the church first starts to meet on the property, so we now feel pretty confident that the 62 people that are buried there are some of the founding generation of the First Baptist congregation, which is really pretty amazing. And we have been going back and looking at some of the artifacts that came out of the burials themselves, and as we were looking through, and this is kind of hard to see what we're looking at here, but I'll kind of try and walk you through it. When we were excavating the individual in grave 13, who turned out to be a male, an older male, a rather robust individual. At his waist, kind of and chest area, we found a large fragment of wood, which is what this dark piece right here, this is wood, and we thought that it might be part of the coffin at the time, and so we took samples of that wood, and we also took samples elsewhere in this burial where we knew that we had fragments of the coffin, and we've been trying to identify what type of wood it is. And what we know is that the coffin definitely is softwood, most likely pine, but this dark chunk of wood, which was found on his chest and around his pelvis here, is not pine. It is a dark hardwood, possibly ebony. So we're not sure what that is yet. Is it something that was laid in the grave with this individual? Was it a decorative part of the coffin itself? More work needs to be done, but this is a really exciting development. We really originally thought, oh, it's just pieces of the coffin, but there's something else going on here. So we are working with colleagues to get a positive identification of the exact species of wood, which I think will allow us to start interpreting what this object might actually be. So this is just a little bit of a teaser to let you know that research continues on this project. And there is new information that's really kind of coming forward almost on a daily basis. So, don't have any good solid interpretations yet, but the tantalizing clue into this individual. And speaking of tantalizing clues, I want to ask Dr. Joseph Jones from the Institute of Historical Biology at William & Mary, who has been doing the osteological analysis on the three individuals, to speak briefly, or as long as he wants, quite frankly, on the work that the IHB is currently doing on those remains. So, Joe?
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
All right, good morning.
Good morning.
And I will be brief. As much as what is going on now is happening outside of our lab directly. That is we have sent along the tooth samples for the isotope analysis. If you recall, that is the next level of the chemical analysis involves chemical analysis, and the isotopes will give us clues as to whether or not these individuals were local to the area or perhaps migrants to the area. So these are early formed tooth samples, usually first molar or maybe an incisor tooth. And these are teeth that form generally around between birth for these molar teeth, around birth to 3 years or so of age. And so they're the closest you can get to like that natal or birthplace chemistry. And so just very quickly, the way that works, if you live on the landscape that you grow up on kind of is what gets incorporated, into your body, into your bones and teeth, and ultimately through the blood and ultimately into your bones and teeth. And so we'll use that to reconstruct what we can about the potential migrational history, the sources or the migrational histories for these people, and then also there is some form of analysis, the carbon isotope analysis, that might give us clues as to the diet, some of what they ate. So this is information that we hope will be useful for your memorialization and long-term for whatever it is that you seek to do through either at the site or through the church in terms of fully contextualizing these individuals. We also have a complete photographic log, so everything, every bone, every fragment, we've analyzed those. Some of the fragments are so small and maybe difficult to fully identify, but we will. So there are still some of those that we're working through. You will have all of that, every tooth, every bone, again, every aspect of every angle. So whatever you want or will need to kind of fully represent these individuals, we should have that for you. But with respect to the dental samples, we did also want to ask, as you begin to think about reburial and those steps moving towards memorialization, what the final disposition of those would be. You don't have to tell us, this morning, today, of course, but it is increasingly the practice that when these types of analyses are done, that the remaining sample, be either returned or destroyed, or whatever it is that the community, the civic community, wishes to see done with those samples. And so we're talking very small tooth samples. Is this a hand up? Or,
How long would it take for the isotope samples to come back?
oh, wonderful, great, great, I was gonna get into you. Very smart. The sample, so, if they want them to come back, if you want them to come back, they can either, again, so it's a very good question. We're talking about small, amounts of samples, so we send the tube, and they will either, what we call micro mill out, they a really tiny drill that will take out about 1 milligram of sample. So usually there's, part of the tube left over, maybe in powder form. Sometimes, if it's, depending, in some cases, if you recall, the preservation is not great on these individuals. And so all of the tube, may take up everything that was viable within that, tube to get the sample. So it varies. And so that powder material can either be, destroyed if you wish, returned for the purpose of reburial if you want. If you want us to keep it to curate, preserve it at the IHB, that's a possibility. Whatever it is, you wish, we can accommodate that. And so they're there. We send these samples to UNC. We work with a geological isotope forensic geologist down at UNC Chapel Hill. Drew Coleman, and he will send off for one form of the analysis for the oxygen. That's one of the isotopes we look at is oxygen data. That will tell you kind of based on the temperature, can give you a north-south gradient. So if someone were from an area, say north of here, where the water is colder, we can actually pick up on that as well. So we use a couple of different types of measures, strontium and oxygen, to try to triangulate where people may have been from. And so those go out to Arizona. So I'm getting to your answer. So those go out to Arizona for analysis. And so those are being the analysis is being conducted now. I've asked them to kind of fast track it. They are dealing with the kind of change move labs down at UNC, so they're dealing with a few things, and over the holidays it may take a little bit, but I've asked them to try to have it for us within a month or so. And so as soon as that's done, they can return those samples. So I'll have more information, try to confirm that timeline for you as soon as possible. But so we're probably looking at a month or so, maybe two, to have the samples back. But we'll certainly have those back in time for whatever plans you have for reburial, if that's the the direction you want to go. Yes.
I don't want to ask about isotopes, but I think there will be one thing that most of the descendant community will agree on. Is there a specific reason why, or is there a reason why in some cases they destroy the DNA? Because I'm assuming that most of us would want everything, every part of that person returned.
Oh, great question. Right. Why, under what circumstances would they want? It depends. Sometimes, if you're working with, particularly with living, individuals, just for complete anonymity and things of that nature, they may want to be extra cautious, in terms of having those materials around. Sometimes people do not wish, to have the remains returned for reburial purposes, what have you. But if that is the case here, it is more common to have. You're absolutely right. It's more common to have those samples returned and reburied. I was just sharing with Dr. Gary before this the project that we're doing at NVCU with the East Marshall Street well remains. They've recently returned those from the Smithsonian. Those will be reburied, with those individuals, and so that is the more common practice.
Yeah, Joe, in May 22, Jonette, the descendant community decided that nothing would be destroyed, that everything would be kept. So those are the decisions that we're working off of, unless the descendant community changes their mind. They said that there would be a reburial and a rededication once the testing was completed. So just wanted to put that out there, that May 22nd meeting over at
Yeah, I believe we have that incorporated into the MOU
Yes,
between CW and the and Black Freedom Link.
in your home. Yes, sir, you do. Thank you.
Yes,
I
ma'am.
have a couple of questions. On the dental work, are you getting that from all of the remains or just those 3 that they initially
Yes, ma'am. So we only have the remains from the three individuals. And so for those, and part of what we're waiting to hear back from as well, just is the viability, of those samples to make sure that they can actually they can't always extract what they need to get, you know, the information. It's not quite as difficult as with the DNA, but sometimes, you know, depending on the status of the tooth, you know, basically, you know, it doesn't change in the burial setting, but sometimes there can be factors that will kind of throw off the numbers, if you will. And so yes, these are only teeth from those individuals, those 3 individuals.
I had another second question on the same subject. Those particles that you say come into the teeth,
Yes.
is that like at birth, early age? Because I'm thinking about enslaved people that are moved around a lot. How are you will that mix you up or whatever?
No, in fact, that's part of why we want to, you know, look at this, is that, you know, if in fact someone was, you know, a migrant, again, that's one line of evidence, and so from there, you know, you might pull together whatever else we can through archival or other forms of research to say the DNA, you know, for the individual that we were able to get decent data from, to try to piece together as much as we can of their story, but no, it doesn't change, it doesn't throw us off. In fact, you know, what this will do is maybe pick up on that possibility. And so these are things that get incorporated just after birth. So we focus on these, what we're looking at are the permanent teeth. You know, they're the baby teeth that form in utero. So those form while the mother's pregnant. But if we look at that, you're getting a mixture of kind of the mom signal and the baby signal. And so we look at the permanent first, these early forming teeth. And so the first molar is the one we go for, that we target initially. And then if we can't get that, we'll look at an incisor. And so I was just reviewing my samples here, and it looks like we do have that first molar for the first 2 individuals, burial 1 and 13. Burial 26, we have incisor teeth, so they form a little bit later. And so you're still getting kind of early life childhood. So all of these are childhood, you know, we're getting our childhood signals. And yes, it's about, we go for that first molar because it's about birth to about 3 or so, 3.5 years of age. It's when that tooth is forming, and it doesn't change in the enamel part of the tooth. That profile, that chemical profile doesn't change over the course of the lifetime of the individual, and not even in the burial setting. So if you're looking at the bone, sometimes that will incorporate, you know, there's development and things, you know, that can make its way into the bone, but the teeth are kind of protected from that. And so, yes, and so that's what we're looking at, only for those three individuals.
On the teenager that was found in the burial, the teeth
Yes.
of that teenager was shattered. Is there some reason why that happened, or any idea of what disease that person might have contracted to have the teeth shattered like that and some of his bones?
Yeah, well, those, it was just really the poor, some of it was the poor preservation. Some of it may have been, you know, over the course of the lifetime, but not a specific disease pattern that we've seen. We have gone back and looked at these again. Not a specific disease pattern that we can see outside of, unless you want to consider, you know, cavities, what we call dental caries and things of that nature. And those just make the teeth more precarious. And so even during the extubation, you know, phase and so forth, like even in the ground, they can deteriorate further under those circumstances. It's just, you know, the integrity of the structure of the tooth doesn't hold up as well. So I think that's what we were looking at, not necessarily in this case a disease pattern, although sometimes there are diseases that will affect, you know, that can affect the teeth. I was just showing my students yesterday, there's a form of syphilis that is congenital.
What about childhood leukemia? What about childhood leukemia?
Yes, something like that could, exactly. Because basically it's all the programming, you know, for those cells that make the teeth, and you can see that in the teeth, so.
And just a quick clarification on James's question, the burial that he's referring to, the teenager, the bones were, for lack of a better term, they were jumbled up. The skull was actually resting on the chest, and the feet bones were up around the knees. So actually what we think is that this individual had been buried and then had been removed from wherever the original burial spot was and moved. And so the process of moving actually disrupted the bone. So don't think that there's disease there. It's just that for some reason, this individual was moved into the cemetery. And so there's probably a very compelling story there. I'm not sure what it is, but that movement disrupted the bones.
On that teenager, excuse me, I think I was remembering what I've been thinking about. They said that it showed signs that he had been using his teeth for work. Do you
There were-
remember?
Yes, there was some very uneven wear. We still think that's the case. And so sometimes it's what we call teeth as tools, using teeth as tools. And so people are doing specific types of work, like leather working, things like that. Sometimes they hold, they may hold materials on one side, usually preferred on one side of the face than the other. And so we saw that with this individual. We still think that is, likely the case there.
One more question about that teenager. On his casket was a glass bottom cut out of a wine bottle or some kind of huge bottle, and the bottom of that glass would turn upside down over his casket. Was that to prevent the escaping of whatever disease that they thought that child might have had, of escaping through the ground or airborne?
Right, an African diaspora cultural practice, possibly in terms of, he's asking not necessarily about what we can pick up on the sciences here, but the cultural practice as to why people will sometimes place certain funerary, items in the burial. And yes, that is a cultural practice that gives practice. So that would be part of, the possible potential interpretation, of this individual, possibly. And I should also mention we've done all of the measurements. So every tooth, every bone has been completely measured and so forth. So you'll have access to all of that information. Again, it will be a wealth of information that I think you'll find useful. Some of it, again, directly useful perhaps for memorialization if you like, and then also just for further educational purposes down the road. You'll be able to share this information with your other congregants and family members and whoever else is interested in this. So we're pulling that all together as well.
So, thank you, Joe, but everybody please know that IHB, the lab, you can go over there and talk to these guys.
Yes, anytime.
And anytime you want, because this descendant engagement that we've negotiated is full and unfettered access. Okay, I'm sure they'd appreciate a call before you come, but you have folks over there that are continuing to work on this. They're looking at the remains, they're looking at the studies. Every time they come up with something, some of us get a call, but you can go over and actually talk to these guys and listen to what they're finding and what they're studying and ask your questions. That's important because at the end of the day, when we publish this for the rest of the world to see, we want to own it. The descendant community wants to own it, okay? So.
And for anyone who wasn't able to come and see the remains when we met there, if you want to actually come and see them, we don't allow anyone else to see them, but of course, if you want to, again, just give us a call, shoot us a call, email, and we can arrange that anytime.
The only thing we don't want you to do is to take photographs of the actual remains. We guaranteed the descendant community that they will not be photographed or published.
So I can transparently and publicly announce to all of Williamsburg that looks at whatever it is I post when I post it,
Everybody.
that if they are a descendant who wants to go over, it's okay for me to.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. The more the merrier. And if there's some way that we can capture the questions and the responses that we're getting, we'd like to do that too, so that everybody knows what the answers are. Thanks.
And this is a perfect segue into also inviting everyone to the archaeology laboratory, where we're working on looking at all the materials and all the artifacts. So we've gone ahead and established dates. We're going to do the last Friday of every month at 2 p.m. We'll see how it works, but these are the dates that that coincide with. And this is an opportunity to just come over to our laboratory, and we'll send out materials that can give you the address and how to get to where we are. And this is just an opportunity for us to all sit down together, look at the materials. Some of it might be boring. It's going to be a little archaeology speak, but we'll try and open it up to any discussion. Not try, we will open it up to any discussion, anything that you all want to see, and just invite you to our conversation so you can see how we get from all these little 150,000 artifacts in the ground to actually understanding what life was like for these people. So again, please take a shot of that. I'm gonna put this up at the end of our presentation today too, so you can see all those dates, but we'd love to have you in the lab. This project has been transparent from the beginning, and we want to continue that process, and we'd love to have you there.
So I promise to stop talking in a minute, but I just want, in an effort to be as transparent and as inclusive as possible, like I'm really happy there's some people from Upper County who are actually here today, and that normally typically does not happen. And I want to introduce, or make sure reintroduce to everybody, Crystal Lassiter Haskins, who has offered to help create a space down at St. John so that when you're doing some updates for the community, they're not always held at First Baptist or you know, the community building or at Bruton Heights, and you get to know another part or segment of the descendant population.
I think that's great.
So, Crystal, just wave to everybody.
She's the smart guy's mom.
All right, we're going to be there. We're coming.
Absolutely.
That's great.
Good.
Thank you, John. I have to say that. Thank you for offering that. Yeah.
How did you figure out how old they were?
Yeah. Well, we can answer that two different ways. One, how old they were in terms of when they were actually buried. Not how old the person was, but when they were buried. We can tell by the types of, in this case, the nails that held the coffins together. Those nails are a very specific style, and they were made at a very particular point in time, the early 1800s. All of them were that way, the first half of the 1800s. So it's through the nails in the coffin. Now, in terms of how old the individuals were when they died, that's a Dr. Jones question right there. So, how do you tell how old an individual is at the time of death?
So we look at, so up until about your early 20s, you're still growing and developing. And so we look for signs of that growth and development. So for example, the third individual, we were able to get a pretty tight time frame for that one, about 16 to 18 years of age because of that. Yeah. So for the third individual, we were, that's it. Okay. So we look for growth signs of growth and development until about the early 20s. And I was saying for the third individual, we got a pretty tight range. For young people, we can get a nice estimate for this individual about 16 to 18 years of age, because we know that third molar, the wisdom tooth, the crown was fully formed and a small part of the root was formed. And so we actually know how long it takes for all these teeth to develop, and we have a chart that we can compare it to and say, okay, this much of the root is formed for this third molar tooth, so that's the age range for this person. After that 20s, we also look at things like whether or not the bones are completely fused together. So an adult has about 206 bones, but you start off with many more than that. They all fuse together to end up at about 206. And so we look at signs of diffusion and things. And so this person also, the third individual, all the bones hadn't fully fused, so we knew it was a younger person. That also made it difficult for us to tell the sex of the individual as well, because when you're younger, it's not until you're well past puberty that a lot of the traits that we associate with male and female are fully developed. And so for young people, that can throw us off. In fact, when we looked at it in the field, we said, oh, this may be a young woman, but it may in fact just be a younger male as well. For the older people, I hate to tell you, after you get past your 20s, early 20s, it's all downhill. To look for what we call signs of degeneration, right? So you look at things like arthritic change, and things that bones become arthritic. You can get to look for a complete closure of certain lines in the skull called sutures and things of that nature. And so for the other two individuals, we were able to determine that they were at about 35 to 45 years of age, based on changes like that, changes in the hips that we look at, certain surfaces on the bones. As you get older, they rub together, and so they begin to change the way that that surface or the face of that bones look. So we look at all of those things, and they help us to know the age of the people in terms of, and that will tell you the age, what we call the age at death. So if we're looking at them from the grave, that means that they had died at that age that we get for them. So that's how we know.
And can I just say one thing? The spiritual significance of this process is immeasurable, right? And he may not understand that, but he understands this piece. And my daughter, as his brain is reeling, because I actually told him to wait for his question. And my daughter's taking notes. So they understand this piece. And they're getting social science, they're getting biology, they're getting epigenetics, they're getting culture, there's so many pieces that underline a spiritual experience like this. So I just say thank you. Thank you for the transparency. Thank you for taking the time to answer his question. Thank you for not dumbing it down. He needs to know what diffusion and they don't dumb it down. They need to see this, they need to experience this, and I just want to say thank you. And that anybody who is here, tell somebody the next meeting, tell them about the 2 o'clock 2 o'clock on Friday, because until we get, everything happens in time, if that makes sense. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Are you recognizing me?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. I'm the smart guy's aunt. He's asking the questions that I had wanted to ask, so I'm thankful for him that I didn't have to ask double the amount of questions. And I am forgetting what my next question was. Oh, do you think that it's unusual that there are only 60-some remains out of all of those years? I'm just wondering, where were the other people being buried?
All over Williamsburg.
Yeah, that's a great question. Where are other members of the congregation buried? And don't know, possibilities are that congregants who are coming from outlying plantations may be buried on plantations where they're living. And one thing that I'll point out is that there was not a whole lot of room left to bury people. The property boundary at the time of the establishment of the first church, this is it. It's a very small sliver of land, and the majority of it was cut into by a swampy ravine, so there was an area that you couldn't even really use. So they had almost filled up the area that they had at their disposal. So where others are, I don't know. An individual approached me the other day and asked if perhaps these are individuals that are either living in town or they are individuals who may have some position of leadership within the church, or they're elders within the church, although we have a teenager mixed in there. So I don't know the answer to that, and I think we can probably do some more research to try and come up with some better interpretations. John?
Less of a question, more of a statement. For most of us who are from here, we know the different places we've heard that there are bodies buried. Out near Counselor's Close, and other parts of the historic area, along Penniman Road, we know what we've heard. And by oral tradition, you know that most of those things are probably true, that there are graves behind Berkeley Middle School, the whole 9 yards. We know we're everywhere. Just like we were when we were alive and enslaved in the area. We were everywhere then, and we're everywhere in death. It's up to us to figure out if we want to know that information. And if we do, we have to pursue it. And it can't be 1 or 2 people asking to show up and show out. It has to be everybody working together in unison. Unison being the operative word in that statement. Some may know more than others. Some may believe something other than what the other believes, but we have to work together in a cohesive unit in order for anything to occur on a positive level. And now to the question, and I'm not sure which of you to direct that to, but Crystal's son has stoked something for me. This is a very safe space for him. Visiting Colonial Williamsburg with your 5th grade class. And a white teacher in a room filled with white kids, and there may be 2 of you, is not necessarily a safe space. At least it wasn't for me 100 years ago when I was in the 5th grade. Is it possible to do an update, so to speak, and gear it toward the youth of the community where we invite them? Can that be done?
Yes.
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 Yes. Yes.
Y'all tell me when, and I'll put the word out there, and we can work on that, right, Dr. Haskins?
Well, I was going to say, I can't speak on behalf of WJCC anymore,
I know.
but But I do think that in conjunction with the school system, there are opportunities, you know, I'm a stickler for access, so there are opportunities to bring this. We did it with the Lemon Project at James Blair. It wasn't focused on this, but it was focused on genealogy and those things. But I would also say that I think it's imperative as us as the community to facilitate those opportunities for our students. And so in the event that it's power in our narrative and being able to share our narrative from our perspective. So I'm going to put it back on us to provide those opportunities.
We also some dates and opportunities my way, and we'll create it.
Yeah, Johnette, we also have an agreement with WJCC school system.
Yes.
We negotiated an agreement with them to actually do workshops with them. Now, where and in what context they'll take place, we don't know, but that's up to us, because the choices were, we'll come and do it for the school system, or we'll do it in the community, because we're gonna do it. The bottom line is, we're gonna do it. So we want.
I want you to do both. Specifically, esoterically, I'd like to see it as a community event where we just kind of gather, where the kids are absolutely safe to ask whatever question they want without feeling the pressure of their peers who may or may not look like them, and then introduce it into the schools.
Because this is for everybody. This is our history, but it's also everybody's history.
Which is why you do it 2 times.
Right.
You do it in a safe space, and you graduate it to an open space so that everybody is involved in the process. Because it is all American history, and it is our country. But I'm speaking from a place not just for myself 100 years ago, but my kids and my grandkids. They're not always feeling safe in spaces to ask those kinds of questions or do those kinds of things where they would if they were with peers.
Yeah, the good news
So you
is,
introduce it one place.
the good news is the answer is yes.
Thank you.
From everywhere, and we have the resources, don't we, Jack?
Yeah.
Don't we, Jonas?
And one of the resources is in the
We
back.
got the resources, don't we, Dr. Joe? We got the resources, that's right, we got the resources. All we need is the community to come around us and help us organize it and present it. And we'll make the call, and they'll come in and they'll do it in a safe space, and we can open it to everyone, but we can guarantee a safe space for that major PhD lab. We're gonna be calling him Doc. Oh, Jen.
So basically,
I'm really here in the capacity of listening and learning today, but I also would like to offer up some information that may be helpful or some resources. And I do want to piggyback off of Johnette about it being a safe space for our children and our field trips. And the last one I went on was with my grandson, and I must say that I did not feel that it was the safe space that he deserved to have when going on the trip, being in a class that was predominantly white, and the presenters being white, and the feeling that I walked away with and what I saw in my grandson was not something that we should want to see in our children. But we have been subjected to this for generations of going to Colonial Williamsburg and having these field trips. And at some point, someone should have known or should have heard or should have seen it through the eyes of the children that they needed to redo this thing. So that's my feelings on that.
We will have to be the change we want to see. And I think now we're sitting in a seat to do that. So you're absolutely right, because I came here in the 5th grade too. Not a whole lot has changed. I sat under the tree and I read Archie.
And to finish, it was 2 things I wanted to do.
Oh.
Okay, so and what I wanted to finish up with is, as we speak about cohesiveness and working together, I think many of you know of the village and the work that we do. And oftentimes we do the work and people don't necessarily show up for the work that we're doing, or show up for a way that we go this part and then we don't go any further. But to know that we brokered a partnership in 2016 with WJCC Schools. We started a local African American history project in collaboration with the folks at the College of William and Mary, able to bring local African American history to the schools. And we are continuing that now in 2023 as we continue some new programs and other programs, and also highlighting through films the contributions of African Americans in this community. So there are opportunities to work with organizations that have laid the groundwork, have done the foundational work, and started the work, and it would be very gratifying for folks to come on board and work with us. We welcome you to be a part of what we're doing, because it's kind of piecemeal when we're doing it, and then you may pick up and do something over there. But I just want to say that we are with open arms welcoming folks to the work that we do and the projects that we do. And the last thing, as again I said, I'm here to listen and learn. And when you spoke about memorializing the bodies and how we would memorialize, and that you would use the remains from the gentleman as an example, or Mr. Carey may need to elaborate on that. But my feeling is, as an African-American woman, I'm always speaking on equity and equality and for all. So will there be anything in regards to the remains from a woman, a Black woman, that is going to help you to also tell our narrative? Because when we are, as Crystal stated, we are in the front of telling our narrative. We don't want to just talk about a portion of who we are. We want to talk about it in wholeness. Okay. Thank you for listening.
Let's go here, here, and then somebody else. Okay. Oh, Colette and then Jody. Okay, let's.
I too want to piggyback off of Johnette and the smart guy Chase. When I started working, my first job was when I was 14 with Colonial Williamsburg. Of course, you had to have a work permit. So I'm looking for an internship for him for Colonial Williamsburg and tuition to William and Mary College so that he could study if he so desired.
Well, he wants to go to the lab. We'll start with the lab.
And I'm glad that our partners have joined us, because we could not do what we have done without them, with all the leaps and bounds that we've made for the year, the month, with even the last few days have been because of our partnership with the Lemon Project, the Bray School, and our interpreters from Colonial Williamsburg. So if there's some kind of way that when we were growing up, we didn't have this, where you can partner with them to have living workshops with your interpreters, with the Lemon. Jody, if the symposium isn't set, perhaps you can work with them to have something, a live demonstration, whatever, connected during the symposium. And the same thing with the Bray School, if you all could do something live to invite the children in, to get them interested, because like Crystal said, they don't understand this now. For us, this is living history. What has happened in the past has happened, we can't change that. This is living history. For them, it's their future, and they don't even know that they're living history, but when they go, and the people after them, that's going to be history. So, and they can be a part of that if you have this in the labs and in the symposium. And what Janice and her son did was no less the Black tradesmen during the Colonial Williamsburg. I made this. I was so proud to see how they interacted. That your son could get there because someone didn't show up, and it was just live and spontaneous, so energetic. We need to see more of that. They need to see that. And was that recorded? Because we need to have a show on that. Was it recorded?
Oh, yeah. I made this.
I made this. Was that recorded?
Yes.
Was that Black training? Please send us the link.
Yeah.
Because I want everybody to see that. And Johnette, send it to the world.
Okay, so we were going to go here next.
My name is Jacqueline Gardner, and I'm here for First Baptist Church. And one safe place, and I almost forgot it. We have a safe place at First Baptist for a history moment under the leadership of Marie Shepherd, started by Marie Shepherd. So, with all this information, we can provide this history in our churches when we have our history lessons in the churches. Because there's a lot going on, a lot of information is being shared. But when we have the history moment, that's when we learn about this from Marie Shepherd. She's long gone now, but we need to start it up again, and something that can be used by other churches, and get this updated information been included in our history moments at our church.
So I'm gonna just ride on the back of Ms. Gardner here. We just got a $250,000 grant from the city because we have 2 stops on the African American Heritage Trail. First Baptist can host these history moments, but we long have acknowledged that it's not just about First Baptist. And so it's gonna be important for you guys, everybody in the community, to gather around us as we start to map this story, because there's a 100-year gap between Nassau Street and Scotland Street. That story has to be told, that 1856 building, and every descendant that came from there, the ancestor, all of the families, the story, the church had agency, but there are daughter churches, granddaughter churches, all of the community there, the history's gonna reside. So we need to make sure that we do that, not just talk about it today, not just say it's something we wanna do, but please be actively engaged. Doesn't cost you anything to come to the fellowship hall. Not yet, no, just, doesn't cost you anything. So what we can do is we can host and have children workshops because, you know, outside of weddings and funerals and church services, we've got space. So we can do that and start a series of workshops all across the greater Williamsburg area. So, Colette.
I just learned out that the bricks that everybody went out to sign for the foundation, that they were saying that the bricks, the family names would not be seen. They're gonna put them inside. I'm trying to figure out how, that's the only time that I ever watched a community come together. This is the biggest since you all been doing this, is to make sure they put their family names on the bricks. And it was not for it to be inside, it was for it to be shown. So we try to figure out how can we make sure that those bricks will not be inside of the foundation,
So can we,
that the names will be done.
Colette, can we hold that until Matt gets up? Because
Oh,
I
okay.
want to show, I want him to show everybody what the site is going to look like. And I think that's a great question. You're right, because we extended the deadline. They wanted to shut it down in July, and I called them from Switzerland and said, oh, no. You can't turn people away. If they come in to sign bricks in honor of their ancestors, we're going to sign the bricks. So let's hold that, but we'll bring it up again as soon as we talk about the site.
Yeah, it's a good segue. We'll take Liz and then we'll get the map.
Jody.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Jody and then Liz.
And I'm not sure if this is for Jack or Joe, but I'm wondering, you mentioned the early 19th century. Do you know how early the remains were found?
The earliest they would be no earlier than 1804 or 1805. That would be the earliest. Yeah, that's when we know the congregation first comes to that piece of property. Also, the artifacts found with those 3 graves also correspond to that same time period. So 1804, 1805 would be the earliest. I'm not saying that's when it is, but that'd be the earliest.
Okay, because we don't know. We know that Lemon died around 1817. We know that a coffin was purchased for him. There's nothing in our records that we found so far about where he's buried, or where any of the enslaved people from William Mary were buried. And so I was wondering if this could be a I know we probably can't know, but if this could possibly be, because I know enslaved people attended the church. And so I was just wondering if it goes back that early. As far as the date, the only date we have is 1817, and that's when they bought his coffin.
It is a possibility, yes. Yes.
Yeah.
That time period aligns perfectly with when the church has founded itself and is thriving on that piece of property. And that span of time period, 1804 to probably 1834, that's the bulk of when people were coming there and being buried.
One of the other possibilities too, for those of you who've read Rich, Southern, and Black, you know, the story of Sam Harris, who had several babies that died. We can't find them at Cedar Grove. were wondering where they were. Was it before he became wealthy? Was it, so DAR, yeah, they're helping us to try to find that because we may not know who those people are on Nassau Street. We can probably, with the research that's going on, try to figure it out and narrow it down. So, Liz, and then we're done with Leslie.
Hi, my name is Liz Covart. I'm a new citizen of the Williamsburg area. I'm also the founding director of the Innovation Studios at Colonial Williamsburg, but today I just joined you as a community member. I'm a historian, so Jack, and Dr. Jones, I heard you talk about a lot of scientific data and artifacts. Johnette mentioned oral histories. It sounds like we have a lot of material culture and science. I'm a historian, so I probably know this answer, but I thought I'd be remiss if I didn't ask what kind of manuscript and paper records might exist that could help point to the stories of the people who were buried on the grounds.
Yeah, well, for the church specifically, we have a date with the Dover Association, Baptist Dover Association of Richmond, to go take a look through their minutes for this time period to see if there's anything related to the church. The church's minutes themselves, which we have access to. And those are,
We have a couple of Bibles that we have now discovered that belong to descendants dating back to 1852. So we're now the story that had never been told before. If we all get together and put all the resources we have together, we can actually probably figure this out from a historic perspective. Because again, those were not given to anyone. And now the family's very protective, which you can understand. But they've got amazing handwritten notes about who was born, who got married, because that was the only way that we could record the history. We have two that we know of. John Kerry's descendants and Billy Grace's. Yes, Perella. Yes, yes. So they still have custody of those, but we're trying to. I think we've gotten a couple of them digitized, right? We got a couple of them digitized so that we can protect the information when we start to write the manuscript. And there is an author right now writing the next book.
Yeah, Liz, hook up with Meredith Poole, Meredith has been doing all the historic background research. So she's got that paper trail.
I know you want to get moving, Jack, but we've got Leslie and we've got James Ingram, and I know you guys are trying to move this along, but I think it's important for us to hear.
Let's have the conversation.
Yeah.
So I will be very quick. I'm Leslie Skinner, for anyone who doesn't know me. And I feel very strongly that we can find all of these ancestors. We have a lot of, Johnette and I have been working with the DAR ladies we found so many people already. So if there was some way that we could get, I know this sounds very weird, but if we just have like a date range or dates that you're seeing or dates of nails, which sounds very crazy, we can find these ancestors. And I just haven't been able to, we have a lot of stuff, and maybe I'll just go with Meredith, who has a bunch of things, but we can definitely.
But I hope you guys see what's going on right now. This is a partnership. This is not going to happen in a vacuum with one of us doing anything. This is going to take all of us to do this. And we recognize that early on. We're blessed that we've got the professionals and the scientists and the historians. And I mean, you couldn't get a better lab than this. But please talk to the people in the community. Let them know what we're doing. We've got to rebuild trust with the descendant community. They've got to trust us in order to share their records. All of the information that we have, but you can see, and this is just a few people in this room, but we've got partners all over the nation that are working. Ms. Richardson that came in for the gala, she's already saying she wants to do something, and it's like, well, just hold on a second. But, okay, James, and then we'll go back to you, James.
Yes, I'd like to recommend the Baptist Historical Society, University of Richmond's campus. That society has primary source documentation on all Baptists in Virginia, and they're very accessible to get to or call for their documentation. Primary source record books too. from 1791 to the earlier part when Baptists started to enter Virginia about 1750.
Thank you.
And Black Baptists, especially Black Baptist churches throughout Virginia.
Check. We also, while I got CW attention, there's a graveyard behind the Williamsburg March.
Yes.
And, and we need to get access back there because that graveyard belongs to Mount Arad, and they were right there in the colonial things. So they could be there, but we need to get back there. A lady wouldn't bought her house and she wouldn't let us back there. So we need to get back there to see who those graves are.
Yeah, we can facilitate that. Yeah, thank you.
Also in front of the inn.
Well, there's a park lot.
There are graves
on top of it,
all
so-
over Colonial Williamsburg.
But that parking lot in front of the inn, the graves back there could belong to that church. So we need to get back there to see who's back there and what's back there. Jack?
Thank you for this discussion. This is, yeah, we're here to talk about marking the burials, but this is really why we're here, is to have these discussions. I appreciate everyone, speaking up. Sometimes it starts with the kids.
Dr. Chen.
Great. Well, I'm gonna turn it over to my colleague Matt Webster, the Executive Director of Architectural Preservation and Research, to talk about the next steps in actually getting the building recreated on that site. He'll give an update on where we're at with that process, and then we'll go into the main event, if we haven't already had it, which is talking about how to mark the burials. So, Matt, the microphone is a little...
I'll try to talk as loud as possible for everyone, and thank you for having me today. This is an amazing opportunity. The questions are great. I'm worried about what he's going to ask me. But anyway, so my team follows up with the work that Jack has done. Jack's below ground, we're above ground. Sometimes we mix in a little bit, but this has been a really amazing project to be part of. And you can see those excavations that Jack's team was working on, and all of the foundations that are in there. We use that information as well as objects that are found through the excavations to understand what was above ground, because obviously that has not survived. And let's go back real quick. So one thing that we really looked at in the beginning were these little bricks right here. There, and there's a fourth.
Further down.
Oh, sorry. Oh, way down here. Right there. Which we asked lots of questions about. We didn't know what those were. They just seemed to be randomly placed. But once the archaeological team gave us that information and plotted it out, what we began to understand is that we put a frame on top of that foundation. So late 18th, early 19th century frame for a building. And those 4 bricks were key to understanding what this building looked like above ground. And that's because those were placed underneath floor joists to stop the floor joists from going into the ground and rotting. So it told us exactly how that frame was arranged and how it sat on the ground. So we're taking all that physical evidence and putting it into the research and development of what the original building looked like. And to protect that, we don't want to destroy any of that. All of that is still below ground today. It's still intact. We can go back and look at that. And this really crazy drawing right here is actually how we're going to protect that. We're going to float the new church, the reconstructed church, above all of those original elements that are underground, because we don't want to harm those at all, because that's the story. We don't know later on, but people are going to be able to come back and do with that information. So we're going to be very careful to protect that. So these are the engineered drawings of how that new foundation is going to float above all the archaeological resources that are below ground, that original foundation, those bricks that held up the floor joists, which I think are just, I'm a little weird, I think they're amazing, but to protect all of that, so we can go back later on if we need to, and leave all of that intact. And this is really what we've come up with. I know it's colored right now, but that's picking up different pieces of the framing. But this is the very early church. This is what it would have looked like. That's what its frame would have looked like. It's very common. It's a very common frame for what you would see in the late 18th or early 19th century, exactly the time period where Jack's finding all the evidence for the establishment of the church. The other thing about this part of the building is that what we see with the foundations, with all of the bricks and everything that remain, is that in this section, what we see is a really amazing story of establishment. It's built quickly, they're putting bricks directly on grade, they're lining them up all over the place, they're using recycled materials. So it's this real effort to establish a church on this site. And it looks like, and we're fairly certain now, that there was not a building there, that they built this building. This was purpose-built to be a church. And then and the next step is that this is the front part, that early section. There is an addition on this that comes on fairly quickly off the back of this. And what we see there is we see very quickly they're trying to establish themselves. And that addition off the back shows establishment, a really formal foundation. So it shows the struggle to establish and established. So it's a really amazing story to see when you look at these foundations. And this is the render of the church. That's the church with its addition on it right there. You can see the fence lines in place. It's roughly the same size as the Brave School is. Both buildings are comparable. So there's still some work to do on this, but this is where we're heading with all that information about the frame that we're getting from the foundation, from the objects that are being found at the site, and then we have now started to develop these models. And this is what we need to move forward with so we can then submit to the city to get all of our permitting so we can start to work on the site, do all the site work. So the markers, the grading to reestablish some of the beam details at the site as well. So, with that, unless anybody has any questions about that.
Colette.
Yeah, I need to know how I'm gonna see those family names out and not inside.
So it is a good question. So if you look at how these bricks are laid, so you only see the sides. That's how you build the foundation. That's how you have to do what's called bonding. And so our goal with this is that we have the images, we have the drawings of all the foundations that Jack excavated, and all of those bricks will be placed back in exactly their same location, but you don't have any of the flat faces. That's not how they laid the foundation. But we have talked about how do we use these bricks at the site? Because those are really important parts of this story. So how are those bricks used specifically? We've been talking with Nicole and interpretive committees, because other buildings will come into play for the interpretation of this site. And so are we going to use those there so the names can be seen? So there's a lot of conversations right now about how those bricks will be used moving forward. But they're not going to just be shoved, I don't know where you heard that, they're not going to be shoved inside of the building in unseen areas. You wouldn't see the name on them, but they will be face bricks.
What? And I heard that. You said you don't know where. I heard that from the brick people. And I'm just want to guarantee that those bricks don't be, unless we can see those names. We want to make sure we can see those names. We do not want any other option. And we need to make sure that Colonial Williamsburg and you and engineers and everybody know that we did not get our descendants to be, they the one that gave up everything. Most of them. And we haven't. The living haven't. But we want to make sure our ancestors' names be seen. So there's no option for us as descendants. Where I got it from, it was because, just like you said, the flat top can't be a thing. So that's true. So that's what the brick people were saying. And I want to make sure that there's no option for us as descendants. There's no other option, but you all come up with a way to how we're going to see those names. So I'm just, we can have a vote on it, we can have another meeting on it, but I want to make sure that I speak for those 80s and 90s.
Right. I think we all agree. I think we all agree that those are important parts of the story.
Okay.
And so one thing Jack was just whispering to me, and we've actually already talked about this. So let's go move forward. So the building right behind the church is called the Bryan Stable. So it's that building that's right behind it. That we are taking that offline for what it was used as a storage building. We're taking that offline and it will be used as part of the interpretation. And we've talked about using those bricks in that building. So they will be lined up so you can see the names, because the descendants, the story of the descendants is incredibly important and it's very powerful. And as you said, those names need to be seen, that it didn't just stop in the 19th century. It continues on today and continue on into the future.
So I don't think there's anybody here that disagrees with you, Colette, that those are an integral part of the story. And whether they are used them to hold that building up or not, they will be on display and they will be interpreted and the story will be told. Because again, like we said to Dr. Chase, we're still making history. And so people need to know about that, so.
So we have brainstorming with different people, mostly my cousin. We talked about the example that Jack showed the last time we had a
I'll show it here in a second.
with Alexandria.
Yeah.
And the outlining of the caskets. Some of the bricks could be used for those 62 outlines of that area. There have been talks of memory gardens in that back area. We could use bricks for that. The black eye and the amount of distrust that would occur if those names are not seen is something that's insurmountable. We would never, as a city, Williamsburg would never recover for that. So I'm not even adamant, I know for certain that you're going to come up with something, but just that Alexandria example was the first thing that popped into mind.
Yeah.
If I can skip ahead and go right to it. This was going to be part of the presentation. The Contrabands and Freedmen Cemetery in Alexandria. There's a list of the people buried in that cemetery. They don't know where they are, but they do know the names of the people, and it's been cast in bronze on display, and when living descendants are found of these names, they're put, and so we have, what do we have? We have the bricks, and we have the 1865 baptismal list, which has 1,500 names of the ancestors, which, so a concept that is, as Matt pointed out, is to use this building. This building is the place where all of these names are available. This is another.
And it will be free and open to the public to see that.
Free and open to the public, yes. Yeah, and then going back one more step. So the full Nassau Street corridor, which includes the reconstructed church, cemetery, Bryan Stable, Oliver Cole Stable, all is part of the interpretation of both the grade school and the church. All of this corridor is free and open to the public. Nicole?
Yeah, can I just double check too? Bryan and Oliver Cole will also be climate controlled, meaning that there'll be air conditioning and HVAC in them, which definitely is going to be important.
Yeah, I'm concerned about the materials that you use aside from the bricks. Traditionally, a lot of homes back during slavery times use hardwood, cypress wood. That wood is ageless. And I was wondering whether or not you talk about the floor joists, were they cypress wood?
So they weren't. It's actually interesting in Williamsburg. So we actually are using what we see in Williamsburg a lot in all of the housing is a mixture of pine, oak, and actually poplar, and a lot of poplar. But poplar in the 18th century isn't the poplar, 19th century isn't the poplar we have today. They're basically hardwoods because they've been growing for 300 years. So we're going to be very careful in the materials that we choose. We will reconstruct accurately from information. However, we have lots of techniques we can do to protect that frame and make sure that it lasts well into the future before it needs any repairs.
So Matt, I have a question. You talked about the original door joists that you can actually see now and that you're going to preserve. When you put that building back up, is there any way that you can do like they've done in other parts of the globe, where they actually put just a square of thick glass that will actually show the original Joyce, so that we have an appreciation for the historic preservation piece of it? Is that, I know,
That's absolutely a conversation that we can have to expose some of that. Now, remember, we're floating over the top, so we don't have the floor joists, but we have the bricks that were under the floor joists, and I mean, we can definitely talk about that. We want to be very careful whether it's the bricks that you sign or it's the bricks that are in place, because when you create those environments, what you sometimes see is the original materials start degrading. So you want to be really careful with that. That's definitely a conversation that we can have, we can work towards.
And maybe I just want, I don't know that I'm understanding this, but I just know cornerstones in Black church and theology is a big deal. And so if there's any way to, I don't have an idea, but any way to bring attention to the cornerstone, and as you were describing the process of the struggle to build, the time being torn down, covered over, we're having the conversation now, it's just a very full circle moment. And I think and we're talking about honoring, I think honoring goes as far as just honoring that cornerstone. If that is a cornerstone piece, but that cornerstone piece, that's a big deal.
it's not just the
Layers of
building. It's not just the building, it's a church.
It's a church, but it's a that's a big deal.
Does St. John have a cornerstone?
Yes.
Yes, we do, and there's a plaque.
First Baptist has one.
Yeah. So we know God's cornerstone. I mean,
That's the important
big
thing,
deal.
so.
Can we make sure y'all purchase a veil too? A teeny one, a big one, or whatever, because I know they have veil. For a school, or for it to be a school, and for it to be a church. Every church had a veil in Williamsburg. So it was a veil there, even if they were later, it was a veil there. Just like that veil went over to First Baptist, it might have been that veil, who knows? But we need to make sure we get a little veil just to know, because that's the way the ancestors said. They knew to let the family know that the children are coming home for Sunday school and coming back for church. Or they going to school and then out. So that's what those veils symbol. Every church had a veil, but a lot of them got rid of their veils. So the veil would be, if we could get a veil, it would be great, and going to the fields or anything else to add.
So something significant for the cornerstone, with all the names you have on the baptism burial list, most of them are repeated family names. So like you have maybe 10 Ashbys, you just use Ashby as opposed to each individual. Just use the family name and you will incorporate just about every surname I have known my entire life as a member of the population, the community of Williamsburg. I mean, that's fairly simple to do. And we've come up with ideas for how to go ahead and mark those graves and utilize those bricks. But remember, and I know that you guys don't have any say as far as this is concerned, but this is something else I've heard from families who's come down recently to have a look at what's going on with the Boy School, the rebuilding of the church, etc. They called it the Black Alley. So, like, is the tour going to be relegated to this? How are you going to people the streets of Duke of Gloucester Street and the rest of the historic area so that it's not just the Black Alley?
Okay, I talked to Cliff. The city has the diagram drawn.
For the walking trail?
Yeah. It's gonna be modified because it has to go out and embrace those two sites. And I understand that he's working with the city to get that changed so that it does include this. And I haven't heard Black Alley, but I heard cultural, something I heard.
There were always Black Alleys. You might not have heard it. That's what she's talking about.
Oh, okay, okay. But I didn't hear that, but I did hear something about the reference to
cultural corner. Cultural corner is what I heard.
Can you expound upon the walking trail? Like, what do you mean when you say walking?
The African American Heritage Trail that they've approved, that went to the Congress and they got funded by the city. What it did was it had, can you just do another street? No, over.
Oh.
Yeah. Here they had, on the other side, the walking trail stopping, the rest of it going back into Duke of Gloucester, but then coming out to Francis and stopping. So we are now asking them to redraw that so that it includes the two sites, Bray School and First Baptist.
And the walking trail being facilitated by interpreters?
Well, yeah, everything is gonna be, that, it's gonna be a part of that entire trail. So we thought, you can't get here and have a visitor make a decision about going left to Duke of Gloucester or go right to see Bray and First Baptist. So if we modify the trail would have them included.
Okay, can I add one thing? I took my kids to see the site. I mean, they've seen the site, they went to the memorial, but I took them to see the site and to see the Bray School again. And I said, do a video for your friends. And Kaden, my daughter, she said, Mom, I have it on video. She said it's so weird that people are just walking by this place and they have no idea where they're walking.
That's right.
She said, Mom, this, it like really hit me. She was like, this is just, I said, how do you feel about this? She was like, it's cool, but this is weird. People are just walking by like, so I appreciate that.
Please get involved. Please get involved in this trail or walking path, whatever we're gonna, and we haven't decided on the name. I'm on the advisory committee of that, but hang on one second, Jenny. But please get involved because the voices that they need to hear are ours. And the young voices are really important. Because if it's really inclusivity that we're after, then we have to make sure that physically that happens. So that you go and you feel like this is a part.
We can get away from what y'all were talking about, so I apologize, but I'm just gonna
I'm
sorry.
All I want to say is, all of this is important. Don't let this lead you away from what's really important. Our story in the whole town.
Yes.
Don't let this be a distraction or a little side note, because our story is more than this. And sometimes, I'm not talking about y'all, because I work with y'all, and that's what's making it hard for me to sit here, because I work with Colonial Williamsburg. I walk in looking like that, but I am a member of this community, so I feel like I'm being torn in two different directions. But I want to be respectful to both. And I know divisiveness is not going to work, so we have to find a way to work together.
Right.
But I'm going to say what a lot of others are saying. You want to tell all these stories, and you want the powers to be to know that you want to hear about how they're going to tell the rest of the stories. When you finish with the church, when you finish with the school, how are you going to get back to telling our stories that have never been told?
Amen.
And as far as the cornerstone, the people, yes, you're right. But the people were the cornerstone. The church is a structure, and I'm not saying that the buildings are important, because it verifies and justifies how we know what we know. But you don't want to take the light that's always been off the people. And we don't want to be cute and laugh about where we're buried. That's embarrassing, it's insulting, and we shouldn't have to suffer that. And so we need to learn when we're in these spaces not to do the same thing. So it hurts me to my heart to know that I have family here. And I don't have to prove where they were. They need to prove where they weren't. Do y'all understand? If over half this town was enslaved or of African descent, we shouldn't have to prove anything, because nothing happened without us. So I'm getting real fed up. And I apologize, but I'm up here this morning. I gotta go because it's too much for me. Because my folks were here in all these spaces, and all those founding people show up on their pages. They either own them, made them, or moved them around to the point that's why we don't know where they're laying. Some of them are in compost, are probably compost y'all. There's nothing funny about that. Every human being should have had a place, a sacred space, and a safe space to lay down and go to their Creator. And they didn't have that. So as we move from these moments, it makes a difference. And your son is Chase. I don't know if his name is Chase.
Dr. Chase.
That's what Colonial Williamsburg and myself and the community needs to embrace and use as a template. Every child like that child should have their genius stimulated, their humanity stimulated, and know their value when we tell these stories. He shouldn't be having to search for anything. He asks the questions. I see children on the street every day with school groups that don't have a clue, don't know they should care, and that's why they don't care, because we're not visible, and they don't have that safe space to react like they did in this room. Here they can ask and they're going to be protected and encouraged. That's not the case.
But they were also told before we left the house.
Yeah.
That you are bosses. And so when you have a question, you ask the question.
Exactly.
Even though I told him not to ask. I said, wait to talk to Dr. Jones, but.
Well, see that one back there?
Yeah, he's a leader.
I taught that one and the other 5 to do that, because I didn't get that. So that's all I want to say.
But thank you, Janice, because that is really important. We have got to pick up this mantle and do this. We have got to, because we were every space here.
But yeah, that's a true statement, because I went to HBCU, I went to Norfolk State, and it's very sad to hear being a freshman on campus, and when I tell somebody I'm from Williamsburg, and the first thing they say to me, we didn't know black people lived in Williamsburg, I thought all y'all was white. And then when my counterparts came from different years, being on that campus, it's like we put Williamsburg on the map. So I kept calling everything the Burg. Now you got to think about, we have Petersburg. So we was arguing between Petersburg and Williamsburg. But see, when the bad girls came from Williamsburg to Norfolk State, they was like, where are all these beautiful women coming from? Where y'all been hiding? But see, with us being in York County, and that's another thing too, where when you go to a quote unquote, we'll call it more of a predominantly white high school, for me to cheer at an HBCU, I can't shake it like the way that an HBCU shake it. So to be a woo-woo girl at BSU or to do something at Norfolk State, my body is not equipped to that because of the type of high school I went to. So applying for the cheerleader, I can do the jumps, but they're shaking, I had to go down. But that's what I'm saying, it's just where that's what they say. There's no,
We've gone from grave marking to booty shaking.
But that's what I'm saying, but that's what everybody thinks.
And the point is that with 52%
Non-black.
black in 1776, there are people, you don't need to get that say. I get it still.
And they don't
I get it
want to
still.
come
They
to
say,
Williamsburg.
Yeah, you live in Williamsburg? And I
Yeah,
say, yeah.
correct.
They say, oh.
What?
So, can we talk about the
I'm a
grades?
statue.
Because we want to hear from you about the grades and the way, you had the site jack, you had the fencing up, this. So this we looked at, I think, with Alexandria earlier.
Yeah, this would be the Alexandria model, what they've done at the Freedmen's and Contraband Cemetery, where each individual grave is marked with a flush stone marker. And this is what we did is we've modeled that based on what we found archaeologically. So each marker is exactly where a grave was found archaeologically. And the markers have been sized into 3 different sizes to denote whether it's an adult, a child, or an infant. So you can very quickly see what we saw archaeologically. And the one thing I'll point out is that we had a discussion at one point about the possibility of a gate into the cemetery on this side, but I want to point out that this is the parking lot side, and we really want to make sure that this space does not get used as a pass-through for people using the parking lot trying to get the vehicle off the street. So access, we will work out access, but I did want to point out that we want to make sure this is not a space. It's just people are walking all the time. So here we see that rendering of what this concept looks like, and there's some possibilities for materials. Matt worked this up.
So let's go a little bit slower.
Sure.
The diagram that you see, this one, how do we feel about that? How do you feel about that? You feel?
I want it to be a silhouette so that we know that that's a grave, there's no mistake.
Anybody feel differently about it?
Not differently, but I just want to clarify. So this is a mock-up, this is a simulation of what could be. And the reason that the fencing is there is, A, you want to prevent, absolutely put parameters around the space. But then also you want to prevent people from walking through.
So, yeah.
And I also want to know what this would look like in conjunction with the gray.
Hang on one second. Let's talk about the actual grades first, because I also have a question about access.
Right, and then I'm
Okay?
wondering.
And not so much the back side, but the front side, because people need to be able to pay their respects. But anybody in here object to the outline, granite, the size, appropriate size? Because I think that's important for you guys to know before you go into stone choices and everything else. And also 62, there's 62. How do we feel about numbers? How do we feel? We don't have names, but I think that 62 is significant. And I think that we need to be aware that we're paying honor to 62 people. There's not just graves there that we don't know. How do you feel about that? That's what, and we'll take it a step at a time, because we want to give these guys enough information for them to go back and get to work.
And my only question is, are we sure that it's 62?
Thought it was
By a
60.
shadow of a doubt that there are 62, because if we put the stamp on 62 and we're leaving out what could be, that's something that's a problem.
Yeah,
Yeah, we thought it was 63.
we excavated 90% of this site, focusing on our excavations going further out until we ran out of burials. So we do feel confident that it is 62 and that we have everybody who's buried here.
So, because we thought it was 63, actually we went to press and the media
Right.
said 63 and had to back it down to 62. Because we, okay, so we're okay with the markings now and the shape, the size, the orientation, Jack, is the same way that you found them?
It's exactly as we
Because
found.
that culturally is significant, right? The head and the feet, okay, so now can we go to the next one? And then we're not gonna forget about the fence, because I see that there's no opening there. And I've got I have a question about that, so we'll talk about that, so.
Yeah. I'm just showing this, and Matt worked this up as some options. This is just to show you the size of 3 different markers. One of the questions is, what is the material of the marker? And bluestone is a durable stone. I'll let Matt talk more to that, and some of the different options for use of stone here.
So we went through basically all the possible stone options. And bluestone doesn't stain. It's a nice color to it. You can have it natural, or you can have it finished. And so we really wanted to go to something that's going to last, that we knew wasn't going to crack, it wasn't going to stain, it wasn't going to settle, and we're going to end up with damaged markers in the future. We want these to be permanent markers at the site. And so we came up with bluestone. There are some finish options, and it depends on how we want to memorialize these markers. But anything from, these are the 4 that I would recommend, the bluestone natural finish. This is just as it's coming out of the quarry. You can get it just slightly rough, but the thermal finish kind of looks like pock marks, so a natural pock surface. But then you get into the sanded finish and the hone finish, so that's very smooth. The hone looking a little shinier than the sanded, and that just depends on, again, how we want to memorialize the site. But this is used, we use this all over the stone, all over the historic area, and it lasts, it doesn't stain bad. We talked a little bit about marble, but the second a leaf hits a marble marker, you have a stain from a leaf on there, and we don't want that. We also want a stone that, as we maintain those grounds, it isn't going to be chipped and damaged real easily. So that's my thinking as we work through this weekend.
So the architects they throw this around freely, like we know what the difference between the natural and the thermal finish is. But would you guys, do you need to see them?
Yes.
Before? You do. So what we'd like to do, Matt, is we'd like to get stone samples. Sure. And we'll have them somewhere that we can actually share them, and people can actually come and see them. Okay? I had no idea how important this was until we looked at the World War II memorial in Washington. I was like, how many colors of gray can you have? But anyway, it's important that you see that before you make a decision, I think. So if we could get the stone samples, and I'll put that on my list to do this, and we'll figure out where we'll have them available for people to come and look at. Somebody
It
else
was
has-
just suggested that the samples go to Jack's lab.
Okay.
And that way, if
With-
people are going
okay.
over to look at the new
Okay.
materials.
Yeah, and of course, we'll have the standing dates every Friday, but it doesn't mean you can't stop by. We can make
Yeah.
sure that it's accessible and everyone can come take a look at them.
Okay.
And also, before I forget, people need to know that Dr. Jones's lab is not part of Colonial Williamsburg, that it's at the College of William and Mary.
Yeah, okay, yeah, thank you.
Yeah, how would the stone be placed on the markers? Would there be a base or would it just be?
That was also something that I was very concerned about because again, I don't want to see markers that end up settling and cracking. And so this is actually the base. So we'll put a packed gravel base so it'll drain so we don't get water coming up and staining the stone. And then will be basically like a Portland mix. And so that'll lock that stone to this base and make sure that it doesn't move and it doesn't settle and crack.
So they're using the 1x2s?
I'm sorry?
The measurement for the base of it usually to kind of be putting usually 1x2s. They run along the bottom so you put the base on top.
No, so it'll be a solid. We'll go solid all the way underneath of this. So we have 4-inch gravel base, a 2-inch of what we call dry pack on top of that, then has the Portland, then locks a 2-inch thick marker that's on top of that.
So we agree on the markers, we agree that we want to see stone samples, right? We agreed about the bricks and the fact that there may be an opportunity to use that other space to actually show the signatures. I'm trying to remind myself of all of this so I can remind you guys of it. But
Hopefully it's recorded, so.
Oh, okay. Okay. Next, can you go in closer on that? Because to Crystal's question
Yes.
on the
About
fencing.
the fencing, yeah, we can go back to this one.
Yeah, that one.
Yeah.
You,
And there is no gates, this is just a simple rendering. The gates can go wherever we need them.
I just put down a couple of things. I'm against them having access for foot traffic, because it will destroy the site.
Okay.
They do not need gate for access to foot traffic. And the fence should be high enough for people to see over, but not step over.
Yeah.
Okay, okay. So you had something to say?
Well, mine was just for clarification. Yeah, mine was just for clarification, and I just wanted to see, I saw you have like on another slide, just what it looks like in proximity to the grade school.
Yeah.
Oh, and the point being, because when I think about graves, they are accessible, right? But we also want to honor the space. And so I think it was you, Ms. Harshaw, that was saying having access from the back, but there's a difference between having access and being a easeway.
Right.
And so if it is an easeway, that's disrespectful.
That's out.
If it is access, appropriate access,
That's
and I don't want you to have to travel all the way around. I think about my dad. I don't want to park and my dad not have to walk around to get on Nassau Street to access it.
So that was my question, Crystal, is that, Miss Crystal, that
I'm on Crystal.
the back should be closed because we don't want people walking through as a shortcut. And it is a sacred space. But on the front side, I'm thinking there needs to be a space, if I know that one of my ancestors is there, I'd like to come and sit. And I'd like to come and have a contemplative moment. So how do we treat that? Do you have access here? Because when you enter the site, come in from Nassau Street, and those of us who have wheelchairs or will have walkers, do we make this the space where we honor these people? How do we do that? And if so, is there some way that there can be a bit more transparency and not this solid fence that's closed? Because that way you can control the.
I apologize for the model. So what we're doing is, that fence didn't exist when the church was, when the
There.
first church was there. So we put that up as a barrier so that space would be respected, that we didn't just have visitors walking through. It's just a model, that is not, it's not the height, it's not
Okay.
it's solid, so I apologize for that confusion.
Okay, but, so there is an opportunity to open that
Yeah.
space to be honored from that entry
Absolutely.
with this one sealed because it's part of it.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Would that be on the National Register for Historic Sites?
It's in Colonial Williamsburg.
You can't do that?
No, you can. It's actually, it would fall, so that was something that we would update. So we're actually the highest level. This falls within the historic area, so it's a national historic landmark district. So it's the highest recognition nationally that a site can have. And then you have contributing structures within that. And so we would update that, but it already falls
So
within.
that would be a presentation, a celebration for that church.
So it already falls within there, so it's under the same protection already.
So anybody other than me think that we need places to sit and pay preference?
Anybody sensitive to the movement of those graves, maybe done by nature, by earth, by rain, weather? The appearance of being cluttered in some spaces, twisted, is that the way it's gonna look?
That's exactly the way they are. That's the way they are now, right? Is that? Yeah.
It's exactly as they
So-
were
so-
found.
Yeah, so if the markers are that size and that shape, if the markers are that size and that shape, it's to resemble what's underground.
Right.
So, I mean, you guys, I think, saw some other options, but what I'm hearing is that this is the one they want to go with. You know what, at a bird's eye view, you're not going to be able to tell the angle anyway, because only thing you're going to see walking in is the limestone, and, you may see one that may be off angle, but I think it's not going to, it won't be looking
down.
Yeah. Ms. Lassen?
Yeah. My nephew was asking the same thing about the shape and how cluttered they were. And this might sound a little crazy, but I was reading that some of the graves on the reservation have been washed out because of maybe hurricanes or different elements. Could those graves have been shifted and not necessarily buried just like that?
No, we don't believe that they've been shifted. All the burials are on what would have been the highest point of land in that little area. And we can tell archaeologically when something has gotten eroded away. These were very clear, what we call a cut. So we know that is where the hole was dug and it's not moved. So what we're seeing by the fact that they're at different angles is that there were not permanent markers. There almost certainly were impermanent markers with these, but there weren't permanent markers so that people know exactly where everybody is, and as you start to fill up space, some of them, the exact location gets forgotten about, and so they cut into one that's already there. The orientation too is, there might be various reasons for why they're oriented, not exactly with each other. I think a lot of it has to do with just they can't see each individual one like you can in a modern cemetery where they're all marked. So you get this variation in how they align. I'll just point this out. Where we do see them nice and lined up is right through here, which is right along the fence line where we saw. So they were using the fence to keep them lined up, and as they kind of get into the interior, there's nothing to help them keep them in line. That's why they start to get off kilter a little bit.
And I think it speaks to authenticity too.
Well, and I think it speaks to a couple of things. I think it speaks to the question of decency and order, aesthetics, but also the authenticity piece. And so maybe to synthesize it all, could there be something that explains why this is this way and what is not? Because I don't want people to assume that because weather or something like that, we maintain this, because there is something about decency and order and wanting people, you know what I mean? So I see it all, but is there something that could be detailed so that people can see and not because I trust interpretation right? But let's not leave it to his interpretation, but to have something.
And I think that's where this building right here works. This building allows us to do that work, to fully interpret what people are seeing. We can have maps of the cemetery, interpretations of what they're seeing, along with the names. This could, that building can allow us to really tell more of a story than just what you see in the ground.
I just want to say I believe in being authentic. And it looks jumbled to me, but if that's the way it really was, then I think it should be that way. And also in reference to the comment about the bell, if you didn't see any evidence that there was a steeple or anything for a bell, I don't think we should start adding things to the building.
Right, it's gotta be historically correct and all. I see, Nicole, you're over there busily writing down exactly, Crystal, what she was saying about that. The story has to be told, the plaque, people have to understand why they're there and appreciate the importance for it. Okay, so now, anything else that we want to talk about before we ask you guys to deliver this by 2026? No pressure. Anything else, Jack? Anything? Yes.
I was thinking about the question of numbering was raised. If there's going to be more robust interpretation, should that be something that is incorporated into interpretation versus something that is marked on the stone on site?
It's open. You guys
Could be both.
decide. I just think that somebody said earlier in a meeting that the number of graves was significant enough for us to pay attention. I don't know how to do that. I'm not designed to. However you think we want to do it, you guys decide that. Tell us what you think.
I think it'd be interesting if you had literally a digital replica, if there's that capacity, or even it could be on a panel, that replicates that with the numbering and so on, in ways that you can or might not want to manipulate the site.
Okay, so not on the limestone itself, but on, okay.
That's a possibility.
Okay? That works for me. Anybody object to that?
Would you repeat it? I didn't get the point.
Okay, rather than chiseling the numbers on the limestone itself, she was saying perhaps a digital replica, something that is going to be incorporated in the story that's going to be told about the site. That's where we put the number and the significance of it. Okay, James?
I have two problems. First, the fact that there might not have been a bell, or there was a bell on the church somewhere. There's a book called, and the primary source for African American structures, church structures, it's called Climbing Jacob's Ladder. You really need to get a copy of that for yourself. It shows African American structures from the early 1600s all the way up to the 20th century. And so you can see some in the earlier time periods of the 1700s with bells. So it could exist. The second problem I have, this structure, the wooden structure, was blown away by a tornado. They came through and took it out. So we really don't have an idea what it looked like. And that's been my problem ever since we've been talking about this. Because again, we have numbers, and numbers is something that I wrestle with for the 25 years I've been doing Gallup-Pen. And the numbers, like we talk about 52% of the population in Williamsburg, there is a census to come up. 1775 in Williamsburg, out of 1,800 people in Williamsburg, over 953 are enslaved people. City slavery category of city slavery is different than, the work is different than plantation slavery, the work is different than the majority of the enslaved people upon the high seas and fisheries, building ships, and different other categories. So we do have information and numbers, we don't have to just generalize. But I'm thinking that, again, when we're talking about, and I don't know who suggested about the bail, don't eliminate things because we say we don't know or we don't have the record. It's in the record. And there are visual sketches and also pictures of some structures that still exist in our country. And so we just need to make sure before we eliminate an idea, and I think the bell idea was I think it is a bell. Even if it's a bell that's hung, that's been rung by hand.
The good news is that the research continues.
Yes.
Because this site is not just gonna be static, because these guys are studying. You heard Joe and you heard Jack. I mean, I can't tell you the amount of work that's going in, looking at every angle of this, because it's important that we get it right. That doesn't mean that we'll get it built and stopped, but we wanna get it started and up, because we can enhance it if we find out something. I think we found out about the overhang on the porch.
Yes.
And I said, well, you didn't show us that the last time. He said, well, we found evidence that there was one. And I said, okay. So as we find things and as we discover things, I don't think that we're gonna say that this site is gonna be static unless we know for sure.
I like to say that I can tell all of you that my team, I don't think Jack's team is, we're never happy. We're always pushing. When we get done with the project, we start asking more questions. And if we find more evidence, I mean, Raleigh Tavern, you put a porch back on that. And we're constantly going back to buildings and asking questions because we have new information. If that new information indicates that there was something different there, that's what we do. That's what we do. We are seeking accuracy. We want these sites to represent those individuals. And that's our goal. And so that's really what we're pushing for. So we're constantly researching, and we will implement research as we find it.
And James has, he has a really good suggestion. We need to read. We need to read. That's how I thought about those Harris bodies, those babies that Sam Harris had. You know, I was like, oh my God. Called DR. I said, I don't see them in Cedar Grove. Could they possibly be on Nassau Street? We don't know. But if you read, then you can come up with the questions. And these guys are open to questions. Nicole is going to be open. Ask her, because she's going to be developing the interpreter program, right? So ask the questions, because it may be something that nobody's thought about. But we have an opportunity now to influence the way the story goes and how it's going to be told hundreds of years after we're gone.
I just want to make one more, put some more information out there. Don't forget that 2026, Virginia 250. If you are of or from Williamsburg and you were here during the bicentennial, you know there wasn't an awful lot about us, for us, or to us. This year's different. And it's different because you're here, you're aware, and you can avail yourself of information. If there's something you need or you want and you think I might know, I probably don't, but I know who to send you to make sure that you get the information that you need, and would happily share that. When you go home, tell somebody, so the next time it's not just you, it's somebody who comes with you. The James has made me so happy today.
Yeah, we actually have a seat at the table for Virginia 250. Several of us are on that.
Right, so related to that, there are funds made available through the granting process for projects, and I believe it's this coming week that Virginia 250 is hosting a webinar.
Okay.
So check the site. I will send it to share the link.
Okay.
You have to register, but it's your name and email and affiliation.
It's an amazing opportunity.
Yeah, so this week, coming up this week, they have a webinar for granting.
The good news is that the country is now in a position and waiting to hear. We've got to now step up and voice it.
Yeah, I noticed that you said earlier that you had excavated 90% of the site. Why not the 100%?
This goes to always wanting to be able to come back to what we've done. We always try and leave something of a site so that somebody in the future who has better techniques and new questions can have something that they can answer those questions. So that is part of our archaeological ethic, is we always try and leave something behind. And the fact that we excavated 90% of the site is actually more than we normally do, but we wanted to make sure we had all the burials. So the area that has been left behind is not in the area where the burials are located.
So I'm just gonna push. So when we look at scale, we're still, the probability is still low that there's no other human remains there.
Yes.
Like insignificantly low. Like 0.5, below 0.5 area.
Crystal, here's what we said to Jack earlier. Probably not as nice as this, but we said, can you tell me for sure that there are none there? And he said, you can't, but you can keep digging horizontally. You may recall in some of the earlier meetings, they wanted to stop, remember? And they were gonna go vertically, and we said, no, keep digging horizontally, because you've gotta find evidence where graves are breaking. So, you remember that. You guys have not missed a meeting, so I know you remember. So, as far as we know.
Well, and so I think it goes back to that, and then that's my last point, is honoring those who we know existed, but leaving room for those who may not have been discovered.
On that side.
Yes, ma'am. Because if we're sticking with 62, I don't know. It's one of those things where it's just like, if there is any chance.
You don't want to forget it.
You don't know, absolutely. Or not even that we're forgetting because we don't know, but we don't want to acknowledge what could be.
Yeah.
And so, but I do think that it is imperative, paramount, that we say 62 because that's what we know.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? And as it evolves and as the process and, whatever, it's a fluid process as I understand, so things can always be added, but that's just one.
Yeah, I think this goes to Maureen's point about doing something digitally so that we can, you can scrap it, you can update it quickly.
Yeah.
One of the things that we heard in talking with the folks at Alexandria about about this, which this is cast in bronze, is check, double check, quadruple check all the names because they found that they had a typo on one of them, and how do you change that? So I think doing things that allows us flexibility as, not just for in case we mess something up, but so that as the research continues, we can add to it, and we can change it, I think is key. So in the discussion of actually putting something on the markers themselves, it sounds like the decision here is no. I think that's probably a good one, so that it gives us that flexibility in the future.
Okay. Any other questions? Anything else, Jack, that you need from us?
No, this has been wonderful.
Okay, we established that we'll do the way. But in addition to that, will we have a water committee? I just want to make sure we're doing.
Are we asking for one?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
With all the surnames, I just want to make sure.
So what
that
I've
the grades are not the
What I've
only.
learned works really well with CW is if we just ask.
Okay. Yeah.
Isn't that right, Jack? We want wall,
It
we want
doesn't
a wall
have
with
to be
names.
with the names.
Anybody not want a wall?
I'm sorry, what name?
The Alexandria?
With the
Can you put
baptismal
Can you put it back up,
Just
Jack?
like that.
Yeah, let us see.
The baptismal list, burial list.
Yeah, no, see that wall with the names of the ancestors there? Does anybody object to us having that?
With the surnames.
With the surnames on it? This is a good idea here? Okay?
In an interpretation building, you can have the
stories.
The baptismal list, digital.
Well, I'll be out there interpreting the site, telling them that.
You and Dr. Chase. You and Dr. Chase will be out.
Roberts is Hunley is
So,
very.
so we have to figure out, okay, so the fact that we're asking for a wall with the names on it. Now we have to figure out where on the site it will go,
I
right?
think, and we will have to have a discussion about that.
Okay.
That this wall will need to be in one of these buildings.
Right.
Yeah, as opposed to a memorial
Right.
That's outside. It will-
That's fine.
And this is
Floor
based on
to ceiling,
floor to ceiling.
floor to ceiling.
The rafters, everything.
What else we want, y'all? We
We
want greensward, we want it to be maintained on those grave sites so that blue limestone is seen. What else, Ms. Lassiter?
Well, the one that you just showed us in Alexandria, how many names do they have on that wall?
There's 1,500?
Okay, so that's plenty.
Yeah.
Surnames.
If we were to go with that baptismal list, so many names are spelled incorrectly, would we do it exactly as they are on the list?
Well, but that's the offense. That's the authenticity.
That's the integrity.
That's right. I mean, I can't tell, I wept when I saw the handwritten notes from First Baptist for the church meeting, to know that somebody had prose that good when they were supposed to be field hands. When you think about and you see the impact of that, it's pretty powerful. So I think the authenticity of it, some of the names are spelled wrong. I mean, some of the census people.
Some of our names are spelled wrong.
Yeah, well, mine's always.
Right.
And the way they heard it and the way
And not only that, there's some that are just male 25,
Yeah.
female 25.
Right.
So I'm saying, put that on there. If that was on that list of the enslavers, put it on there, male, and their age, because that's how their owner identifies them. We won't know their name, but we will know that they existed.
And Janette, put on your website,
Your website.
Oh,
wow.
maybe our
Okay.
ancestor will bring stuff that's been in the chest or something, because I actually got, an employee that's retired from Camp Perry that sent me some stuff, but he blotted out his name because he don't want me to know that he sent sensitive stuff. You'd be surprised at who might have something. And I still don't understand why we don't have an aerial map of, before they did the parking lot, because aerial maps was out there, so I don't understand. So maybe we'll be able to find that map and we really would know how many people's out there.
So, Joe?
I just wanted to quickly say, just to let people know that we definitely heard you regarding the children and the significance of having them, come to the safe space and ask these questions. Some of you know, it started under Dr. Blakey, as an undergrad at Howard, on the African Bureau project, and we would have kids come down on the bus road to get a tour of the lab. And, the questions they ask, the things, to see the spark, to make sure that spark isn't put out at a young age is so important. And so they will be, welcome, encouraged, in a safe space when they come to the lab. So please do not hesitate, to whatever you decide to do, which is work, with school and do your school work. And so however you is separate in the community capacity, whatever that is on the weekend, it's better. To come to maybe coming to the campus on the weekend might be more comfortable. For people, whatever you decide to do, just please don't hesitate to reach out. That is critical important. Many of us who got started, we get started because we were so fascinated with going to people, what they tell us about our people. And we know that for any of these projects that we work on, connecting children to stories is so important, especially for the older members of the community. So, and this can be a way to do that. They come in and it's naturally fascinated by it. So we take that and try to encourage them. So, so please do reach out to us about that.
Absolutely. You'll get sick of me.
So we have, I think, lunch there coming. 5 minutes? 5 minutes, so we got.
If I don't get a cup of coffee, I'm gonna hurt
I know.
somebody.
I know, like, Corey, where are you? So you want to take a few more questions now? You have everything that you need?
I think so. So what, some of our directives here will be to, we'll update the rendering, we'll come up with some options for review of access into the cemetery and seating space. I think we can do that pretty easily, pretty quickly. One of the next steps will be, now that we have, the decision has been made that the markings, comfortable with the markings, is that Matt can take that site plan to the architectural review board for the city and get it approved, which allows us to then actually move forward with this implementation.
And hopefully we'll be able to come to Dr. Johnson and Jody pretty soon to the Living Project where they at in the university, that we actually get the students to come and learn about the Living Project. Because it's the only African American thing at the College of Women there. But where they at now, they're going small, they're in the building.
Okay,
so
okay, Colin. Okay, thank you, Colin. So let's do one thing, because I want to make sure that CW is hearing us now, because we've got to now enter into this process of permitting, site planning, approvals, because I gotta tell you, there's not gonna be a delay, right, Jack? October 2026, we're gonna all be over there on that site, right? So I wanna make sure that we're good. So Jack was talking about next steps. So can we just hear him and then we'll go back to asking questions, okay?
Yeah, so being able to move forward with architectural review board review, which can allow us to then put together actual site plans, and Matt and his team will do that. I think another directive that we're hearing here is to start coming up with concepts for this building that we can talk about in more concrete terms, and how this building can be used to convey not just the history of the congregation, but a place for the names to be on display, and what that might look like. So this is a part of the next step for us. So that's what we're hearing here. Does that sound right to you?
Okay. Next steps for us, we're gonna get the kids into the IHB. We're gonna get folks over to the art lab, right? We're gonna all start thinking about anything else that will enhance this site. Like, I think they should have that piece of glass on the floor so I can see the original buildings, but Crystal and then Ms. Lassiter.
But I think my Ms. Lassiter.
Oh, hold on.
Did we talk about a place to sit there? I heard you say you would like to
Yes,
come
we
in.
did. We talked about benches.
Okay.
I think my question is for, Jackie had a question too, that she done had her hand up 3 times.
Who?
Jackie.
Oh, okay, she's real shy, we don't know. Hold on, Jackie, we'll come back to you after Crystal. How about that? Okay, and I gotta see you after this. You asked something about, okay.
But I will.
Go ahead.
Hold on. Well, my question is just that I'm gonna go back to something and I'm gonna say, I don't want it to be a missed opportunity. Because we do, and the folks that I want to address have actually left the room. Amy Ritchie was one of them.
Amy's right there.
Amy's here, okay, hey, Amy and Jen. I don't want it to be a missed opportunity because we mentioned so many times generationally that these field trips were not sensitive to our children. And so I hope that we just keep having this conversation. So the people that need to make the decisions or the ears that need to listen and make those decisions, they need to hear from us. And they need to know, because time is of the essence for our children, because whatever trauma was done has already been done to the rest of us. So
what decisions do you need?
Well, so what we need is a better way to present when the children go on the field trips, and specifically smaller children, because we are shaping their minds. We're shaping the way they feel about themselves. We're shaping the way others feel about them and how they treat them. And it needs to be fixed.
So I'm in the room right now. You've got Amy, you've got Nicole, you've got Adam, and the shy person back there, Madam Janice. Those are the folks that I know will make sure that we do.
I know that Janice does.
You know
I've been to Janice and Adam's presentation.
Yeah, you know that.
But the children aren't being exposed to hearing.
So how do we, so we need to figure out a way.
That's my question. My question is, and I'm trying to remember from my experience, I was an African-American interpreter at the Powell House in Cartersville. And how old? I was 14. I may have been 12. It was volunteer at first until I got the work permit. But my experience came from Gregory James, Emily James. That's where the story is. My question was, what or how are not the scripts, but how are the scripts developed for the interpretation, and what input from the community could go into that?
That's deep.
Hey, Crystal. Hi. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Nicole. I am the program design manager at the Colonial Williamsburg Foundation. I am also the graduate student lab assistant at the Bray School Lab at William & Mary, and I'm also a PhD student at William & Mary, and I also portray Ann Wager.
And they also told me don't say anything that we didn't tell you to say. Oh, I'm just thinking back. like they were like, if you didn't hear us say it, the way we said it, you don't say it. I'm
Right.
sorry.
No, you're good. So next stages with this are gonna be, I'm gonna be coming in to meetings like this with the community to get your input on the interpretive programming on the site.
And how are the people chosen to be the interpreter for the site?
We don't have anyone definitively chosen, other than I know James Ingram is gonna be on the
Wow, but
site.
James Ingram-
But,
Everywhere.
long story short, right now I'm working with the Bray School and the Bray School descendant community. We're gonna move forward with next steps on interpreting there. I am starting to be in these meetings and take notes so that when we are ready to move to those next steps and stages, I am prepared and coming in thoughtfully with all of the questions you have asked. So I have been writing furiously this morning. I have 3 pages of questions that interpretively need to be answered. I don't have answers for you yet, but I would want to have conversations with you more extensively about how we answer those questions.
We have an additional resource too, who has thrown his hat in the ring. You may know him, Rex Ellis.
Oh, yes.
Who
Yes.
came in October and he said to me that he's, as you know, recovering from a stroke. He called me in Geneva and said, when are you gonna be home? I got lots to tell you. And so we are gonna also use Dr. Ellis as a resource, okay?
Right, one observation. Let's don't get lost completely is what our children are going to learn, because that other half needs to learn too. These are the contributions of the African American community to our society. So don't just get hung up on what black kids need to learn. What white kids need to learn about the contributions of the African American. So don't get hung up on that one half of the story.
That's a good point, because a lot of our families are not just black families.
That's right.
Okay, we have a lot of biracial families. So again, the message, but I think that it's important to us. I know my dad made me learn, but Crystal was saying, you know, before they left home, you get that speech. But again, you're absolutely right. Everybody, that's why you got people like DeSantis down here talking about crazy stuff. But anyway, so now it's lunchtime.
I just want to leave y'all with this. We have people who always tell us what we need and what's wrong. What we need is in this room. What we need is in this room, okay? Maybe not just all of you. Who's going to tell your story? Who's going to care about the narrative? Who's going to show up in numbers greater than they can count? Well, compared to the last time we had an engagement or gathering, and say, okay, we care how you tell our story. We want to be at the table. We want to sit and talk. We want to decide what's being said about us. See, we don't have that. We don't come. We come to this and point fingers, but we don't come with resolution and solutions. And we don't apply. We don't bring our children. You see what I'm saying? We have to show up and take ownership for what's ours and what's important to us. It's only going to be important to other folks when we show that it's important to us.
And this is the problem. And I'm just gonna address this elephant and squash it right now. We have had meetings, I have been in meetings, I have done, and you pick and choose who you want at these meetings, period. And I have been to every meeting, and you can't make people come if they don't feel welcome. And the only time they ever felt welcome, like I said before, was at the Brickyard, doing their families. So we can't just drag people here. We got to make them feel trust, and we got to make them feel obligated. When you talk about the Living Project, when I first found out about my history, Magruder history, Oak Grove history, guess what the college did? Send me to the Living Project. That's still in 2 little small buildings, don't have a building, don't have an office, don't have anything for us to even know about the Living Project. That's the only African-American thing that was there. And we need to address that. So when I tell my families or people, go talk to the Living Project, go talk to them and be involved, they can't do it because we're in a little small, that little hole that they got them in, and me working at the college with all these new buildings is ridiculous. So when you feel like your only Living Project, African-American project that was started back in the day, and they still in the cubbyhole, you look at disrespect. I know I do. I know I tell our group from Magruder, it's hard to get in that little hole. So if the college and Women Mary and Colonia Williamsburg is talking, don't keep inviting them to the group and not making sure we can't come and learn what the Living Project is about. Don't tell me to go there and get a grant. Don't tell me to go there and get historic. Don't tell me to do that if I can't bring my community there and be safe. So to me, it's about respect, and we can't make people come, but we can, just that brick thing made people come. And I'm telling you, it was something about it. And you know what was about it? It was about respecting everybody that was from Williamsburg. It wasn't about First Baptist, it wasn't about that freedom. It was about respecting everybody in Williamsburg. So you can't just drag them. We gotta come up with a foundation, because I look around, it's out there.
You are absolutely right.
It's out there.
You are, let me finish. You are absolutely right. Because I have been in that place when it was just me. I had to learn, I brought respect first, okay? And then I expected it. I had to find my own comfort level because I was uncomfortable. I had to find ways to make myself welcome in that space. And then I taught it to my children. So there's nothing that anybody's saying in this room that I haven't felt. When I said a great hoax by myself all day long with black snakes falling down in the corners, okay? When the people up on the hill didn't care that I was there, when people came in and attacked me for telling the story, I had to find a way to stand in my truth and know why I was there. So I've been in those little holes. My children have been in those little holes. And I'm not refuting anything else that anybody else has experienced. I'm just saying, I need help. We need help. If it's not you, then go tell someone who's interested in coming and helping and who's willing to endure what we're gonna go through. Because what I experienced, even though it bothers me and made me tremble, it was nothing compared to those I'm trying to tell the story about. So I came with a commitment, okay? I prayed when I got there, I prayed before I got there, and I prayed when I left, okay? As soon as I cried all night long, but I got up the next day, and something that was given to me inside of me fueled me so I could go back again. So that energy, that anger, we gotta use it in a positive way to move forward. I can't do it by myself. I'm not trying to pull anybody that doesn't want to be there. But there has to be somebody other than the 5 of us that are there. It's 5 on the historical side.
5.
That's not 5.
And Ms. Kennedy, I'm gonna tell you something, and I think it resonates with what everybody is saying. But I remember at Carter's Road, there was a bus that came, and I don't know, it was a black woman. I don't know what she said, but I just remember being pulled away in my.
You were jail.
Yeah, I was junior interpreter. I just remember being pulled away because of the disdain of seeing me in the dress and the disdain of seeing me in the garb. And so there's something about us having to see ourselves in what we have been portrayed to be and still show up. Because she left, and it wasn't until somebody had to go back and get her and say, but you still need to hear the story. This is still your story. So I think on both sides, Williamsburg still needs to show up. I don't give a shit if they're in a, I'm sorry, but I don't care. I care that we're in small places and that needs to be rectified. But despite, we still need to show up. When I go to organizations and I say the most powerful place you can be is at a school board meeting, that's the most powerful place you can be. So to everybody's point, show up.
Let me say
show up. And until we show up, and we show up and
shut down, but let me please say this. Let me please say, let me please.
But I'm gonna say, and until we show up, and we show up in unison, and there's something about what we focus on, we magnify. We show up and we focus on now what's next, now what's next, now what's next. And we can't get deterred by the guard. And I'm sorry, I didn't know it was 5 people. I'm like, 5 to tell our story?
For all of them.
And I have the audacity to ask, what are the prerequisites?
That's crazy.
You know what I mean? Like, I'm sorry, I apologize for that, and I'm sorry, I do cuss, I'm an educator. But I'm also a math.
You notice we didn't.
If I run to the pastor, I'm gonna tell you that too before you tell them before.
And I think Amy heard you, and I think she'll take that message back. We're gonna have one last comment. Hang on one second.
Let me just say
Hang
this.
on, one last comment from Jackie.
And this goes back to my previous comments. Now you know why it's important when you tell our story. Don't tell me that you're not just, but you are telling it or memorializing it from the standpoint of the Black man. But you have to know the position of the Black woman in the Black community and the power. And as you can see in this room and hear these voices, you know that we are the ones that have had to stand in spaces when our men could not stand. And I want everyone in this room to know, we talk about being at a table and building tables. First, we have to build our own tables.
Thank you.
I built the table of the Village Initiative as the founder. And then I was able to step into school board meetings. I had no clue about going to school board meetings. My mother didn't go, my grandmother didn't go, I didn't go as a parent. But what I learned, as Crystal stated, was the power in showing up at a school board meeting. We have been able to affect and impact significant change in WJCC schools. The last school board meeting I attended was in, we were talking about LGBTQ students, but also about the integration film. We have been inviting the leadership of WJCC schools to come to these 2 showings. We had 3 school board members who came and told, after showing up at that school board meeting and speaking on the relevance of what the class of 1969 experienced and how it's relevant to today, and it's relevant to you as a leader that you're going to be teaching our children, it's relevant and you should show up. I got an email a couple of days later from the superintendent requesting that showing for every leader in WJCC schools. So it is important. And I know we built the blueprint to be able to show up in Williamsburg. And so and another thing about the 5 interpreters. I worked for Colonial Williamsburg for 30-something years. The onus is on the people at the top who are doing the hiring and create those requisites for what it takes to get those jobs. There's a lot of folks that could do those jobs, but they don't have the qualifications or they're not being hired. So we have to look at that too. And forgive me for being a little passionate, but I do need y'all to show up at those school board meetings, and I need y'all to show up with us.
We need you not just to show up at the school board meeting. We need you to show up there, but we need you to show up, period.
Absolutely.
Okay, period. Because I gotta tell you, carrying this mantle, sometimes it gets a little lonely.
Absolutely.
And I gotta tell you, when you look back and you see nobody, it's painful. But you know what? It's not gonna stop. It's not gonna stop. We're gonna keep marching. So, but in the moment right now, what you're doing right now, you're influencing something that will be here 250 years from now. That's right. I want you just to accept that. Own it. Embrace it. Because it doesn't happen often. The folks off of River Road in Potomac, Maryland right now, they're in court. The folks that are out in Montpelier, Monticello, they're having to fight. We don't have to. We simply say, what do you want? Let me tell these guys. And somehow, some way, it happens. Okay? So take that with you today. Stay tuned, go to the next meeting. We're going to give you conceptual drawings that we think are going to be pushed forward. Please pay attention, share them with your families, and try to have a voice. Thank you guys for coming. Enjoy your lunch.
Thank you.
It's late, but enjoy your lunch.